How's it going, folks? Stu here. Belfast is the latest film from Kenneth Branagh, aka Mr. Gilderoy Lockhart. Can I just call him that from now on? No, I'll just... his right name? Fine, yeah. It just screened at this year's London Film Festival, and you bet your bloody knickers I went and saw it. I hope you didn't. That's right, I saw Belfast, which is a film which has been getting a whole bunch of buzz where it's been screening at the moment, and it seems to be ramping up for a very big awards push this year. But it pains me to say it, I didn't really click with this film at all. Considering its buzz and everything it's got going for it, Belfast is probably, so far, the biggest disappointment of the festival. I didn't like this thing. The film is essentially kind of a love letter to Belfast. It follows a young boy in Belfast during the Troubles, and we sort of see a kind of, I guess, slice of life from him. His parents are struggling, his grandparents live with them, the Troubles, as I said, are going on around them. It's a very violent time of riots in Belfast. It's got a cast made up of some really great names. I mean, Judi Dench is in here to start with, and she is great, she's brilliant. I'm not going to slander Judy here, don't you worry. Kieran Hines is in here, and he's brilliant as well. In fact, those two are my two favourite performances in the film, and I love watching them on screen at any point. But Jamie Dornan's in the film, Catriona Balfe's in the film, and Buddy is played by newcomer Jude Hill, who is good. I mean, everyone in this film is giving good performances, I think. But I think therein lies one of my first sort of problems with the film. I never really connected a lot with any of the characters in this film, despite the good performers that they've got performing these characters. And I think it comes down to the screenplay constantly feeling incredibly obvious and incredibly contrived. I always felt like it was a screenplay that is always trying to say something and you know it, you know? There are sequences I really like from a screenplay. As I said, Judi Dench and Kieran Hines' characters, when they're talking together, I enjoyed watching them chat and I was engaged by that. But I found that most scenes in this film, whenever they ended up getting me vaguely hooked in, there'd be something that would pull me straight back out. It'd almost feel as if Kenneth Branagh, who wrote the film as well, was sort of just like creeping into frame, winking at me. Did you get that? That was pretty poignant, wasn't it? That was deep. You're crying, aren't you? His writing voice always felt present where I wanted these characters' voices to feel present. And so it was a film that I was always aware was a film. Like, I was watching it where I was watching people performing a screenplay, which is a #1 big problem for me in films. I hate when that happens. And the first of a few big barriers here that really got in the way of my enjoyment of the film. The second of those barriers is Branagh's direction. Now, it's not like it's particularly poorly directed film. I think rather it's that this film, it isn't really doing anything outside of a really paint-by-numbers approach to this sort of story. I think it's more so apparent when we've got a lot of other great directors that have directed very personal love letters to specific cities that they've grown up in. We've taken bits from their life. The first that comes to mind is Roma, Alfonso Cuarón's film, which is again a black and white film dedicated to a part of his life which is very personal to him, set in a specific place and titled that. When you've got films like that that are doing such beautiful things and such engaging and engrossing things, I don't know, it just watching something like this, I couldn't help but constantly feel like I was watching a director that was trying to do various different things, but never really succeeding. All of the sort of creative ideas from a directing standpoint felt a little bit half-baked to me. He does something with colour in this film. I mean, it's a black and white film, but there are these glimpses of colour which are very deliberate when they do appear, and I liked that. I just kind of wanted to see a bit more of that, and particularly in the first half of the film, it did feel a little bit like a director that's just sort of trying a lot of different bits to try and cling on to something interesting from a direction standpoint, but sort of failing and just falling into a pretty by-the-numbers way through this film. There's different beats of drama in the film from various different aspects of this child's life, and granted, I do like the fact that it's sort of from the child's perspective, so you get glimpses into these conversations from him, and when it works, it does give this feeling like there's different things happening with different characters just sort of floating in and out of the narrative. But on the whole, it just sort of felt a little bit clunky to me. And so by the time you get to the climax of this film, where dramatic beats are starting to come to their head, I just wasn't really feeling much, when I feel like it definitely wanted me to. And I promise you, I have a heart, right? I've been crying at films this film festival. This one didn't do it. Even Judi Dench didn't get a tear out of me. And she's Judi bloody Dench. Its heart's in the right place, and it definitely has got this very sweet sort of saccharine tone to it overall, and it's charming in places, and it's got moments that were quite lovely to see unfold on screen. But every time it seemed like it was starting to go down that good path to a nice, solid flick, it's like it just stood back in its own way and was like, turn around, motherfucker, because you ain't going down this road. So it's one of those films for me where it's doing lots of different things, and it's never really fully succeeding at any of them. And the result of that is that they all feel sort of harmed by the problems in each other's little bits. Like, for instance, the whole presence of this kind of rioting from the Troubles in the background of a lot of this film. It's there, and it constantly sort of creeps into the film, and we're reminded of the very real situation these residents are going through in their community, in their street. But when it's just sort of littered through a film which is also trying to be really sweet and saccharine, and it's got this fun, bubbly kid running around, it did often feel a little bit jarring to me. And in fact, it felt very jarring in the end when it becomes a much bigger part of the film. It's like Branagh doesn't quite know how to fully dive into the Trouble stuff, so he just kind of lightly dusts the film with these things. And I think in order for those things to A, work on their own, but also B, work when they're injected into the main story of this kid and his family on their street and everything else that's going on in their life, it needs to be dealt with a little bit deeper. It needs to be sort of addressed a bit more. But those sort of things feel like they're kind of afterthoughts, or not really afterthoughts. I feel like that's maybe a bit too harsh a word for it, but certainly I guess kind of almost the bare minimum, I suppose. And maybe that's the most apt way to describe the film overall for me and how I felt towards it. It felt like a film which was doing the bare minimum at all points and kind of hoping that that would result in something hugely profound and poignant for everyone. And no doubt that's going to be the case for a lot of people. I mean, I know that's the case for a lot of people. A lot of people have been really enjoying this film and are getting a lot from it, and that's brilliant. That's great. I really just wish that had been me, but it just wasn't. I just couldn't really get into this one. So in a filmmaking career from Kenneth Branagh, which I found to be very much filled with ups and downs, it does seem like Branagh's stuck in a bit of a down at the moment, and that kind of kills me because I know he can do good shit. Maybe his best work tends to come through when he's able to deal with projects which are allowed to be a bit more over the top and overt and theatrical. When it's applied to something like this, I think it kind of takes a big swing and a big miss, unfortunately. And I can't tell you how much I wish I had been sat here singing its praises, but hey, shit happens, huh? But what about you guys? Did you manage to catch Belfast at the film festival? Are you excited to check it out when it does come out over here in the UK, which I think is next year? Bit of a wait for that one. Whatever you thought, drop your comments there. And while you're down there, why not click subscribe so you're not missing any of the future reviews that are dropping on the channel from the film festival and onwards. I'll see you guys soon for some more thoughts on more films from the festival. But until next time, how do I find and hug Judi Dench? Anyone?